I'm Manny.
I'm Noah.
This is Devin.
And this is No Such Thing, the show where we settle our dumb arguments and yours by actually doing the research. On today's episode, why aren't people having kids anymore? I'll ask Noah and Devin about whether they want kids before hearing from a birth rate analyst. Then stick around to hear my dad's rule conversation with writer Derek Thompson.
There's no such thing. No such thing. No such thing. No such thing. No such thing.
All right, fellas. Once again, starting an episode of this podcast by asking somewhat intimate, personal question.
And get on my neck.
But before I do that, I do want to just kind of set up the premise of this episode a little bit. The birth rate is declining, and it has been for some time now, and experts predict that it's going to continue to decline. Basically, the number that everyone is concerned about is what's called the replacement rate. Mm-hmm. The replacement rate, which is the amount of kids you need to have to replace the two parents who
Birth the child.
is 2.1. The reason the replacement rate is 2.1 instead of 2.0 is because the 0.1 compensates for two factors at a societal level. The first factor the 0.1 covers for is child mortality, so the amount of kids who don't make it to adulthood. And the second thing the 0.1 covers for is the fact that for whatever reason, human biology produces more men than women. 2.1 kids is the number needed for a generation to replace itself without relying on immigration, for example. And we have not been hitting that number for a long time, since the early 2000s.
What's our rate?
Our rate is 1.5.
Okay.
So we're having 1.5 kids, and we need to be having 2.1.
That makes
kids.
sense. To replace two people, you need two people.
Yeah, at least.
So in 2024, our rate dropped down to 1.5. That's the lowest ever recorded, according to the CDC. And for context, in the 1960s, our birth rate was around 3.5. Now, you might think that this is kind of a Western issue, but actually it's more global. According to the UN, around 71% of the world's population now live in countries where the fertility rate is below replacement level.
Wow.
And just to give you an idea of what that might look like, in China, in 50 to 60, 70 years, they could have half the population that they have today.
If they don't have more kids,
If their birth rate remains what it is. Yeah.
Wow.
So there's a lot of
people.
That is a lot of people. I mean, I don't know what the current number is, but we grew up knowing that there was about 1 billion people in China, right?
Yeah.
And we're saying in the 50, 60, 70 years, that might be 500 million, which is way closer to what the U.S. is today.
Wow.
Kind of insane numbers.
Yeah.
There are a lot of reasons why the birth rate is declining, and we're going to get into those. But as I mentioned at the beginning, I want to know what you guys are going to be doing to contribute to the birth rate, or if you even want to.
Well, I guess we should first make clear that you have contributed to the birth rate.
I'm doing my part now.
Almost. Yeah.
Yeah, almost. I need
started.
another. Technically, I need 2 more kids because it's 2.1.
1.1.
You need 2 and one's just
Yeah, I
failure.
had a child recently, 4 months ago.
Congratulations.
It's been a very beautiful experience. But, just because the birth rate is declining, I don't think means people should feel more obligated to have kids.
Yeah.
And so that's where I'm coming from when I'm asking you guys, like, what your desires might be or what your hesitations might be even. So who wants to go first? I guess we should go with the married one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey,
I think that
it's legal for you to have a kid.
legal.
But
Damn.
for me, I do want to have kids.
How many?
We you never know what the future holds. But in my head, 2 sounds nice.
Okay,
Yeah.
2 minimum.
I grew up with siblings. I think it's good to have siblings.
You grew up with 2 other siblings, so 3 total.
I'm one of 3. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So your parents, they did
did
above
their part.
replacement level. Yeah.
Yes.
They have fully replaced themselves.
Thank you to them. Yeah. Thank you to my parents for your service. Yeah. So that's all else being equal. That's what I envision. But that's not because I think I have a duty to replace myself. I'm not, the broader concerns about world population is not factoring in, let's say, to my desire for kids.
Gotcha.
So you would want
the
kids,
future.
say, even if our replacement rate was a 4 or 5.
Yeah. If the numbers Manny was feeding us said we needed to hit 6 kids per family, I wouldn't be like, oh, I need to hit. I want 6 kids.
Yeah.
Right.
Similarly, if it was like, there's way too many people having kids,
You would still want kids.
I would still want kids because
Well, I feel like that was the conversation.
That's what I was
point,
thinking
right?
with this, where it's
I
like,
don't know when
'cause
that
I remember,
transition happened.
I remember, I feel like when we were growing up, it was always like, the population has exploded so much that it's gonna, there's gonna be
There's
well,
too
there's still
many
gonna be
people.
problems with resources anyway, right? But
Yeah.
there's gonna be too many people on the globe. So it's interesting that now the conversation has flipped in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are essentially a lot of like economic benefits to being at replacement level or more that a lot of analysts are concerned about. If our population does decrease by X amount,
Yeah.
it could put pressure on certain industries.
Yeah.
But yeah, Devin, curious your thoughts as well.
If I want kids?
Do you ever want kids? Is it not that big of a deal to you?
No, it's a pretty big deal for me. I want kids. I feel like there's a lot in my life that I feel like I would negotiate or change or, be open to. I feel like that's one of the things that like I thought about as a kid that I am standing by is that I want kids. I'm also pretty selfish in that respect. Like Noah said, it has nothing. I don't care what the replacement rate is.
Yeah.
I actually think less people should be having kids. There are a lot of parents out there who I'm like, I can tell you're really not into this.
Yeah.
And
People just do it because it's status quo or
It's
expected.
expected,
You're
of course.
supposed to do it.
I feel like a lot less people should be having kids, and I feel like the people who should have kids should like want kids.
Right. Yeah.
I feel like growing up, I had a lot of little cousins. My brother's much younger than me, right? So like, I like being around kids. I like hanging out with kids. I think I'd be a pretty good dad.
I think so too.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Are there for the two
Episode's
of you?
over.
For the two of you, have there been any kind of like hesitations or obstacles, or has it just not really the right time yet?
For me, it's not like I haven't like tried to have kids in a expressed way. There's always like, am I ready?
Yeah.
Meaning like, am I stable enough in my work or career or financially is kind of the biggest factor to think about.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, what would it actually cost to have a kid, let alone then 2 kids?
Yep.
I live in an apartment. There's only so much space. So then
New
it's
York
like,
City.
it's hard to think long term about having
Yeah.
1 kid in my current apartment,
Yep.
let alone 2.
Yep.
And then as they grow and become bigger and need more things in space.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the biggest quote unquote block.
Yeah.
As far as like, okay, how do I weigh this to make sure I'm doing something responsible for myself and
Yeah.
the other people involved in this?
So would you say finances is your primary like thing that you're thinking about in terms of like the readiness?
Yeah, I
do
think-
you feel like
I think so.
Like if you won the lottery,
'Cause-
would that be a catalyst?
if
towards
this
having
blew
kids?
up,
Yeah, I think
You
it
know?
would alleviate some of the concerns, I think, because it's like lifestyle wise, I think I'm ready for
Yeah.
whatever that might entail as far as like, quote unquote giving up like traveling or
Yeah,
going
yeah.
out or whatever. Like that's not a big deal to me. It would be more like, okay, can I actually provide what I would want to
Yeah.
for this family? So yeah, if suddenly I just didn't have to worry about money ever, it would definitely take away some of that because I'd be able to move into a bigger place and be able to make sure, okay, I can afford. I guess I maybe wouldn't even need daycare because I wouldn't
Yeah.
need to
You
work.
have a
But
nanny.
it's like it's like all these things that would make that a lot simpler in a way.
And that tracks with one of the biggest, if not the biggest reason why people who want kids don't have kids is this affordability question, like just how expensive it is to have children. And obviously I can speak to some of this.
Speak on it.
We had my daughter and the hospital bill. This is before insurance, to be clear, but $30,000 to $40,000 just for popping the kid out,
Just to get her out here.
just to get her out into
Let
the
alone
world.
the rest of it.
You
Yeah.
know? And then obviously that comes down a
Immediately.
bunch with insurance, but
Yeah.
still leaves you with an amount that's like, yeah, you have to be prepared to pay.
It's not free to have
a
no
large
kids.
amount. Yeah.
At least in the hospital.
Now, 4 months on, we've got her into daycare.
Mm-hmm.
Now, daycare. Now, this is the one that everyone I think is really
Yeah.
kind of concerned about. And maybe this is a little bit my fault because we live in Park Slope versus like a cheaper neighborhood. But just to share a
expensive,
personal number here, like our daycare is $3,000 a month. So that's, in New
That's more
York,
than
that
rent
could be the
for me.
cost for a 1-bedroom apartment, 2-bedroom even.
It's more than, I think both of our
It's more than my
two-bedroom
rent,
apartments.
Yeah. Now, just think about how much more work you have to do for. I mean, I'm lucky enough that I make a decent amount of money, but like if you want a kid and you're barista, for example, how much more work you have to do to be able to cover daycare. That's a huge obstacle to having a kid. You literally can't afford it.
I think about this all the time. As someone, like you said, we've been, I think, blessed in our sort of work lives that,
Yeah.
we get paid, well, maybe not now, but in the past. Share this podcast with some friends so this could still be true. But in the past, we've made a decent amount of money doing something that, like we very much have white collar jobs.
Yeah.
And I think about it all the time where I'm going to the grocery store and like literally just buying groceries for myself. And I think about how expensive it is, especially to live in a place like New York. I have a dog. His vet bills are expensive sometimes. And I think about what if this was a damn kid?
Yeah.
How expensive that would be. I think I got a lot of other things, to sort through before outside of expenses. But expenses is a big thing that I think about in terms of having a kid, especially because I would want to live in New York still, well, at least in the city, not even in the suburbs. When I do have a family. So part of me just like can't even think about that because I think like if I were to logically think like, okay, I want to live in a city, I want to have a partner, I want to have a kid, how much is that going to cost? It would just prevent me from ever having kids.
Yeah. Like I know I have friends with kids, but I think Mia and I were the first in our kind of closer group of friends to have a kid. And that has, I think, set off kind of like a ripple effect of people thinking about whether they want to do it or not. And that, the affordability thing ends up being still the kind of number one concern. But if you had to guess, what are some other factors that are leading to a decline in the birth rate, not just in the U.S. but around the world?
I think some of this is just like societal in terms of individual people's goals, right? I feel like when our parents were growing up, it was like you get a good job, you get a husband or a wife, and then you have kids. That was just and hopefully you get a house somewhere in there.
Standard,
That was just like everyone's goals and everyone worked towards that. And I feel like now, that's not everyone. It's just that there's a lot more flexibility about what's you can do in life, right? Not everything is so like family oriented. People are not like immediately getting married. People aren't, people are really into their careers and doing other things. So I think like part of it is like there's just more options, especially for women. Like there's just especially more options now of like what your life can be outside of like, bringing someone else into the world.
That's a good point because we can look at the declining birth rate and say some of this is for bad reasons like affordability. But there are also reasons why the birth rate is declining that are good, which is like, women feel like they have more options in life than they used to. Contraception is.
I was going to say, I think birth control, right? There's also, I think, with advances in this stuff, like some people feel that they can wait longer to have
it's true.
kids, right? Like it used to be a big deal for someone in their late 30s or early 40s to have a kid, right? Well, even if it was, possible at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
now
yeah.
you can, there's IVF, you can, save embryos. There's a lot of advancements that allow people to put off that decision till later now too.
Yeah, I think a pregnancy in your mid to late 30s is considered, quote, geriatric
Yeah, yeah.
pregnancy, but
Yep.
those are just so much more common today than they used to be, like you said, because of these advancements in healthcare.
Another thing, and this is more longer term, but people used to have tons of kids because they would work.
Oh,
Or,
yeah.
like,
Yeah,
so like a
yeah,
farmer
yeah.
would have 10 kids, not because they just wanted
We need 10 of y'all out
kids.
there
It's
to
like
get to work.
literally to replace their work.
Yeah.
Or to add on the work. So that's like a immediate pressure to want kids for a utilitarian reason, not like a nice.
Yeah, for
other
sure.
reason.
Kids
So,
are not assets anymore.
Yeah.
It's like that having a child is more of a choice than it used to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Than
not
it
as
is like a predestined.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
a
or like
return
a
on
need.
Yeah, farm
An
thing. It's
actual
like,
need.
hey, it's an investment. I need
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Like I need
Like,
workers.
because otherwise you'd have to hire people or whatever.
Yes,
So
Free
this is
labor.
free labor. So I mean I'd
That's a really
be
good
curious
point.
how that factors in.
So here's a question for you two. You both want children eventually,
Yep.
but I've got to ask, despite all of the kind of concerns and obstacles we just discussed, why do you still want to bring a child into the world?
I think I'm going to sound a little bit like an asshole saying this, but it's true. I just feel like I will be a good dad. And I feel like if I'm a good dad, hopefully I raise a good kid. It's my way of like, yeah, the future seems scary and it seems like it's moving in the wrong direction, but it feels like a way to sort of like, it feels like a way to sort of spin it and like, well, if you bring great people into the world, maybe they can tackle all these challenges.
Yeah.
And if you raise people with empathy and sympathy, like maybe that will help.
Yeah. It's one thing you have some sort of control, over.
Yeah.
Even in the small way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and for me, just to build off that, like as far as fears about, what the future holds or can I afford this and all this, it's like, well, I just always think like people have certainly had kids in far worse circumstances than me.
That's very
Like,
true.
Yeah.
Like no matter what sort of money troubles I might be in, people are certainly in way worse situations and have been and figured it out. So I'm like, okay, certainly people generations before us have had harder times to have kids.
Yeah.
People currently have kids right now in way worse circumstances than me.
Yeah,
for sure.
So that's kind of what I tell myself is like, yeah, I'll be able to find a path forward through that.
Yeah, as daunting as it seems.
Yeah, like, okay, surely between me and my wife, we'll be able to, and our families and everyone else,
Yeah.
like we'll be able to
I'll help
sort
you out.
something out. Devin will help me out. Yeah. I'll go to him with my tin can.
Well, I'll tell you what, boys. We're going to hear from some experts about this
Oh.
this broader issue. Later on in the episode, I'm going to talk to writer Derek Thompson about why he wanted to have kids and about what he thinks human beings can extract from that experience. But first, we're going to talk to Anna Sussman. She's the author of the forthcoming book, Inconceivable: The Impossibility of Family in an Age of Uncertainty. That's after the break. All right, we're back. I'm Manny.
I'm Noah.
Devin.
And we're about to hear from someone who has been doing a lot of analysis on the decline of the birth rate, not just in the United States, but around the world. I'll let her introduce herself.
My name is Anna Sussman. I'm the author of the forthcoming book, Inconceivable: The Impossibility of Family in an Age of Uncertainty, which will be published this September. And I'm a contributing writer at the New York Times opinion section.
So Anna is going to school us about why the birth rate is actually declining. There's a bunch of reasons, but you're going to hear about kind of the biggest ones. My first question for Anna was about this problem with affordability. It's one of, if not the biggest obstacle a lot of people feel when they want to have kids. And so I wanted her to just kind of lay out what exactly the issue is.
The affordability question has been really salient for families. There's certain things that have gotten much more expensive, even vis-a-vis overall inflation. So childcare is absolutely one of them. And one of the reasons for that, and I think it also goes hand in hand with this overall question of rising standards for parenting, is that we've learned a lot more about early childhood education, for example, and the importance of those early days of a child's life. And the Wharton economist Corinne Lowe has pointed out that once you know that children benefit from a higher ratio of caregivers, especially to infants, well, then you have to staff a daycare center with more caregivers. But when the government doesn't step in to subsidize that, as, for example, they do in many other rich countries, then everything is on the parent. And so it becomes this almost zero-sum game where, like, every dollar raise that you give per hour to a caregiver is just a dollar coming out of your pocket, or, $1.50 in earnings, and then you pay your taxes. And then, so it just gets really, really, really expensive. And I think that's where the idea that, raising children is something that people do on behalf of society as well as on behalf of their own family, and that we all benefit when there's healthy children who've been loved and cared for and given the attention and stimulation they need. And so I think we all should be invested in that. I mean, especially given the fact that it's very easy to forget this, but we were all children ourselves once. And if we were lucky, people cared for us and invested resources in us, and that opened up opportunities for us. And I feel like we've really forgotten that, and forgotten how to care for these vulnerable people who live among us.
So Anna makes this point about that it's kind of a criticism of governments, in that governments aren't doing enough to step in and subsidize the things we need to pay for in order to have a kid. I mean,
I think it's wild that so many people in government are pushing for people to have kids without having a real answer to the cost of raising kids. And so much of that is childcare, especially, to raise a kid is expensive.
Yeah.
A lot of people have to work.
Yes.
In order to have the money to raise a kid. In order to work, you have to have somebody watch your kid. Mm-hmm. And as she mentions, like, obviously our standards now are higher than when our parents were kids, even when we were kids, in terms of what those places should have, right? They shouldn't just be spots where a bunch of kids are just hanging out. Like, they should be educated in some way. Like, it's a prime time for your child to be learning. So, yeah, I think the government, it should be free. It's weird to me that, we think that childcare starts at kindergarten in the U.S., where, from kindergarten up into high school, at least for most of the year, you can go to a place that will, school that will watch your kid for free, a public school. But even within that, right, it's okay, what are kids supposed to do for the summer, right? Someone watching a child should not cost money if you want people to have kids.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Even if you're an individual who doesn't feel like the government needs to help you, if you're a government and you want people to be birthing at replacement level, there's obvious things you could do to help. That's an
easy, sort of thing to address, right?
Mm-hmm. And then things just like maternity leave, paternity leave, having those things be supported in a way where it's okay, you can afford to have the kid immediately, and okay, take care of the kid in those immediate months, at least for some normal amount of time or a good amount of time. At least as a start. And then hopefully get somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, look at my ass. I'm because we're freelance. We had our kid, and then I took off 3 weeks.
Yeah,
because I couldn't go any further without then it becoming a problem with our finances. So it's really, it's definitely something. Now, Anna tells me that there's one thing contributing to the decline in the birth rate that we don't talk about as much because it's harder to measure, and that is a general sense of uncertainty about the world.
So the researchers who study why people do and don't have children and population figures are demographers. And since the Great Recession, this group of scholars has honed in on this notion of uncertainty. So if you look at Europe, since the Great Recession, fertility has been falling and falling. Now, usually when economies recover, so do birth rates. But that cyclical trend has been broken since the Great Recession. And the question everyone was asking, whether that's in Italy or in countries with amazing family policies like Denmark or Norway, is why? Why is that happening? Why aren't young people having children anymore? The economy is better, unemployment's low. And I think they've stumbled on this idea of uncertainty, and they link it to accelerating technological change and globalization. So you may be living in the U.S., but you're seeing war in Ukraine, you're seeing war in Gaza, you're seeing, economies failing all over the world. You're seeing AI coming here and there. You're hearing, bellicose rumblings from China. And all of those things combine to give you this sense of, gosh, the world doesn't feel stable at all. And there's very little I can do about that because I can't affect what's happening overseas or a climate disaster, somewhere in Southeast Asia or something like that. So I feel like that's something that it's a psychological, it's an emotional, it's a sort of existential thing that's very hard to measure and wrap your head around. But I think a lot of us, especially younger people, really feel that in our own lives. For some people, it might be they're just facing a huge student loan burden, and that's something that's standing in their way. But everything else is in place. I've interviewed people who are in that situation. But I think, what was interesting to me was speaking to people who are married, they have professional white-collar jobs that until recently felt fairly stable, and the college wage premium had typically guaranteed people decent earnings, for having invested in that human capital, but they still felt this sense of uncertainty. There was one couple I spoke to where they lived in Los Angeles, and they had started last year with a huge wildfire tearing through part of their city. The husband is of Mexican descent, so even though he's a U.S. citizen, he felt really concerned about really aggressive ICE deportation efforts. He had basically a target on his back. The wife has a public health background. Never in her life did she think that she could have a child who would have to go to school with other students who, for example, didn't have measles vaccines. So there's all these factors that I think, even when a lot of the things seem to be in place, there's this kind of X factor or missing piece that for some people is very hard to address, via policy or just telling someone, no, don't worry, things are going to be okay. And that kind of thing, I think, is becoming more and more salient, just this feeling that a child is a lifelong commitment. And how can I make that commitment when I can't even tell what's going to happen tomorrow, if I'm going to have a job or, what the economy is going to look like, those kind of things.
So yeah, it makes total sense that if someone feels like they don't have that much control over their own lives, imagine bringing another human being into the world that you're responsible for.
Like day to day feels a bit scary. So I can imagine like any sort of, future planning for a kid. Think about it logically, it feels like one of the things that feels like a bit insurmountable.
Because I also feel the same way. It's like we actually don't know if Russia is just going to nuke us one day. Yeah. Like that's becoming more and more likely.
Well, yeah. Is AI going to be doing this next week?
Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean,
how are we going to make a living?
Yep. There is an argument from the right, from politicians on the right, that the birth rate is declining because of like a societal decline, like a departure from family norms and the nuclear
values.
Family. The traditional values. We remember J.D. Vance's comment about like the cat ladies.
We're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies. You look at Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, AOC, the entire future of the Democrats is controlled by people without children.
And so I wanted to get Anna's perspective on that argument, that line of thinking.
Looking at the data, there are more births within marriage than outside of marriage. So on some level, they're not wrong. But I think that scolding people doesn't help. Calling people, childless cat ladies and blaming them for something isn't really helpful. Tanking the economy, which our current administration is doing, also doesn't help. Boosting AI, this is something that there's actually interesting gender divides, both on the economy. Women actually feel a lot worse about the economy as measured by consumer sentiment. And women are also really, I think, a lot more skeptical of AI. If women ultimately will control how many children are born, I think doing things that make them feel more and more unhappy and uncertain about the future is not going to help. But when people want to have children and they feel like there's something external to them that's getting in the way, I find that really heartbreaking. It means that there's a relationship. There's, a lot of love that they really want to express, and they're not going to have the opportunity to do that. So that's where I come from, and that's what I feel like if politicians did a better job listening to that group of people and understanding the barriers they feel stand in their way, we could get a lot farther in this discussion.
She kind of, as the kids say, she kind of snapped there.
And
She ate.
She ate, really going hard at this current administration
Yeah.
for things that they've done that she feels like makes it harder for people to want to have kids.
I also think, to her point, it's like they want a very specific type of people to have kids. And they have a very specific idea of what a family looks like.
Yeah.
Right? They're not talking about like two gay guys having a
Yeah.
family. It's like,
Right.
so it's like, yeah, you can't be upset that people aren't having kids, but then have this very narrow viewpoint of what you view a family to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Finally, there's this line of thinking that the world's already overpopulated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have decreasing resources.
Yeah.
Things are becoming increasingly scarce. And so maybe some of y'all should stop having kids.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's not so bad that the birth rate is declining. So I asked Anna about that.
So, we've talked a lot about why the birth rate is falling in a lot of countries. I think one thing that's interesting to think about, too, is there's also a lot of discourse that, the world is already overpopulated and it's already crowded and we shouldn't have more kids. And again, I think this is one of those things that there are a lot of people in the world and some of us consume at a much higher rate than others. But I'm not sure that that's a reason to tell people, don't pursue these very human, very fundamental relationships. Instead, if we think about it as like, okay, there's a lot of us here, we're all sharing the same planet. How about we put our heads together and think about how to do that more sustainably? And in fact, what's amazing is we actually know a lot of ways to do that. We know how to use the sun's energy to power things. There's a lot of tools that we already have. And unfortunately, we see a lot of politicians standing in the way of that or even reversing progress. And those are the kind of things that I think so actively make people feel worse about the future and less inclined to have a child.
All right, so that was Anna Sussman, author of the upcoming book, Inconceivable: The Impossibility of Family in an Age of Uncertainty. Now, we've learned why the birth rate is declining. We've learned about all of the obstacles that are kind of preventing people from feeling comfortable having a child. After the break, I'm going to talk to writer and fellow dad, Derek Thompson, about what people can expect from being a parent. Some of the things that he feels like are really incredible experiences. All right, Derek, thanks so much for joining No Such Thing.
Yeah, great to be here.
There's a ton of different ways we could take this conversation, but I want to start first by asking a question that I actually have struggled to answer, which is, why did I decide to have a kid? Just to give you some context, I had a baby girl a few months ago, and
Hey, how old is she?
she's 4 months.
Mine is 5 months.
Oh, really? Congratulations!
Yeah.
Is this your first kid?
This is her second.
Second
Yeah.
kid, great.
The other turns 3 this summer.
Okay, so you're well versed in in all of that.
You look tremendously well slept.
Yeah.
It's either that's genetic, that's maybe just genetic, or maybe you just have you're blessed with a good sleeping baby.
I think it's the latter.
Okay.
We've been lucky with her. I think she's just a relatively chill baby. But yeah, I've had friends of mine ask me, what led you to this decision? I think I had kind of gained a reputation of valuing spontaneity in my life, just the kind of ability to do whatever I want, whenever I want. And this is kind of antithetical to that.
Yeah, sure is.
I just wanted to posit this question to you. I feel like you're smarter and more articulate. You might have an answer that's much more meaningful than the one that I had.
I feel like there's things you absolutely lose when you have a child. You lose a certain kind of freedom. You lose a certain kind of spontaneity. There's a huge opportunity cost. I mean, I love cocktails. I love wine. There's nothing that I like more than going out with a friend at 7 p.m., 8 p.m., 9 p.m., getting a cocktail, gossiping about journalism, the future of media. Like, I love that shit. It's just much harder to do when you got One baby that has to be put down at 7:30, another kid that has to be put down at 8:15. One of them might wake up. You're exhausted at the end of the day, having worked a full day and also taking care of 2 kids. It's just a lot harder. So there's real costs to having a kid. To me, the costs are worth it. To me, there's something profound in this idea of choosing which freedoms you're willing to sacrifice, right? So I'm married to my wife. We're married. There's a freedom that you give up when you are married. There's a freedom that you give up when you choose to have kids. There's a freedom that you give up when you pick one job. Life in many ways is about making peace with the fact that some of the best things that happen to you aren't the full expressions of absolute freedom, but actually are the embrace of certain limitations that make you a fuller person. And, my friend David Epstein just wrote a book called Inside the Box, which is a beautiful book about the ways in which limitations make us stronger, limitations make us more creative, limitations make us happier. If you look at a survey, the people who tend to be happiest, yes, they tend to be richest. That's important to say. They also tend to be married. They tend to go to a church. They've taken a leap of faith. They believe in one specific God and not a range of gods. And they tend to have children. They have families. It's a lot of limitations on a life. And I think there's something interesting and chewy about the fact that the people who are happiest sometimes have the most limitations on their life rather than those who have the most kind of unbridled freedom. So that's maybe a philosophical justification for having children. I love having children because they are really, really adorable. They're buttheads. They're annoying sometimes, but they're really, really adorable. My youngest has just these enormous cheeks. Her face is like wider than her head is long. And God, I just love coming home and seeing that cheeky smile. My 3-year-old is starting to talk and starting to be able to like do bits. So I'm not just the monster that's hunting her around the kitchen island table. Now she wants to be the monster to hunt me and jump on me and tickle me. That's the fucking best. Those are the best moments of life. So the loss of freedom is real, but I think that true happiness is found in limitations.
Yeah, I was kind of struck by my initial inability to answer the question, but I think I landed on something quite selfish, which is that I imagine myself as a father looking down in my arms and seeing a baby, and I was deriving like such joy from that image, and it is exactly what happens. If the first thing my daughter sees when she wakes up in the morning is me or her mom, she just gets this like insane joy on her face, and that is the best feeling in the world.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of discourse about the decline of the birth rate, not just in the developed world, but also internationally. And there's a range of reasons that people point to, whether it's affordability or the kind of crumbling of the dating scene even. I'm curious if you have any thoughts about why the birth rate is declining and if it's even really a problem that it's declining.
I'm definitely going to get to the second because I think that's probably the more controversial and maybe more interesting part of this conversation. But why is the birth rate declining? I kind of feel like the best way to talk about this is to divide the history of declining birth rates in 2. Phase 1 is roughly between 1800 to 2000 in the West, and phase 2 is the 21st century. So the birth rate in the United States, for example, sort of the completed birth rate, the number of surviving children that people have, because child mortality was so high before the 1700s, 1800s, that women were having 5, 6 kids, but my God, like 2 or 3 of them were dead before they turned 15. And so, that's one reason really why the fertility rate was so high. One reason the fertility rate declined is that kids live longer. Another is that an industrialized economy created jobs that tended to be more easily done by women, a service sector economy. So women went into the workforce, they went to school longer, they got more education. And as a result, between sort of the 19th century and the early 21st century, female empowerment, everything I just mentioned, plus contraception, just made it easier for women to have control over their bodies and determine the number of children they wanted to have. And that, I think, brought the overall birth rate down from the 4s and 3s toward the 2s. But that still leaves open the question of why is the birth rate under 1, at around 1 or under 1, in Thailand, in Japan, in Korea, in China, probably in Mexico City, probably in many major cities, probably in San Francisco and even New York. There, I think you have to talk about more modern phenomena. And maybe Anna spoke to some of this. I think there's a lot of economic anxiety about the ability to afford an adult life, to afford a house, to afford childcare. Those are real things. We don't have enough houses in this country. Wrote a whole book about that, Abundance with Ezra Klein. The cost of childcare has gone up. One reason for this is a phenomenon in economics called Baumol's cost disease, which basically says that as productivity increases in an economy, wages tend to become more expensive, which means that labor-intensive services increase in cost faster than things that can be automated or can be shipped overseas. Think about childcare. You can't do that with a robot, and you can't send your child to, Malaysia to be cared for every day and then get her back every afternoon. So this is something that's gotten expensive faster than wages have increased. You add all these things together, and I would say as a big picture, like it's turned having a kid from a necessity or even a predestination into a choice. My wife and I, we chose to have a child. No one was making us do this. The agrarian economy wasn't making us do this. We chose to have a child. Having a kid is a choice now. And almost inevitably, once something becomes a choice and isn't essential, well, then some people are simply going to choose no.
I had seen so many articles and pieces about this declining birth rate. And I think my initial reaction was like, okay, so what? I want to have a kid and that's great. And I did have a kid, but I'm also curious about, big picture, societally speaking, should we even endeavor to have children at more than a replacement rate? There is that kind of like annoying pro-natalist wing of this conversation.
Totally.
That I think that's not really where I'm at with it. But I feel like, okay, there seems to be an urgency here. What exactly is the urgency?
Yeah. The urgency is arithmetic. China has a replacement rate of about 1.0. Given the population distribution of China and the average age of someone in China, which is about 80, the population of China is going to decrease by approximately 50% in the next 50 to 75 years. If you don't think that's a political and economic calamity, consider literally any city or state in America that shrinks even 5%. How do we talk about the Rust Belt? Do we talk about cities in the Rust Belt that have depopulated as being places where, oh, it's good, depopulation is fine, no problems happen when places depopulate? No. Given stable productivity on a per worker basis, if you reduce the number of workers, you have a local recession. And no one thinks that a recession is good. So I would encourage people not to approach this subject through the lens of Handmaid's Tale. Should men force women to have babies? Of course men shouldn't force women to have babies. That's barbaric, right? But the same way that climate change is a slow-moving, long-term trend that fundamentally is the outcome of human progress, right? Our energy prosperity is cooking the planet. In the same way, the ability of individuals to decide to have fewer and fewer children is going to have long-term implications for economic growth and politics. And so the things that I worry about, the two things I worry about the most when it comes to the inevitable population decline that comes from any generation failing to replace itself generation after generation after generation is this. Number one, you're likely to have economic decline. And there's really no example of a country enjoying economic decline, having no political or social problems from long-term economic decline. But that's what you get if you have a country with fewer and fewer people. But maybe the second order effect to think about is political. Countries in Europe that have faced low growth in their populations have realized that they can't afford their welfare states. They can't afford universal insurance and social security or pensions with the working population that's native born. And as a result, they've had to bring in more immigrants to pay for their social safety net. All right, so far so good. I'm certainly not anti-immigrant, but a lot of people are. And the populist right that has grown, I think, in Europe over the last few decades has been a reaction to the size of the immigration influx that many people in Europe think is necessary in order to keep the labor force an appropriate size to pay for welfare. So now you're at a little bit of like a Chinese finger trap. If you let the population simply decline because the birth rate is under replacement, you have economic decline. If you try to supplement the native-born population with immigrants, you get a right-wing populist backlash. So that, to me, is why over the next few decades, there is no way that a birth rate below the replacement rate in 2/3 of the world won't create a range of economic and political problems. It doesn't mean that we should get anywhere close. We should not get within a country mile of forcing families to have children. We could make it easier for families to have kids by supplementing child allowances. We could try providing things like universal daycare. It should be said that countries like Korea that have offered rather lavish benefits to parents have really failed to increase the birth rate significantly. We can try these things, but really it's just a little bit like climate change. And the same way, there's lots of ecologists, environmentalists that will say, if we keep doing the thing we're doing, the seas are going to rise and Miami's going to be underwater. To me, it's very similar to say, if China has a replacement rate, if China has a birth rate of 1.0 for the next 60 years, its population will decline by 50% or 40 to 50%. And that will be an unbelievably significant story for the entire world.
So, Derek, you've been very clear that you're not advocating to force people to have kids or that people should consider having kids even if they don't want to. But for people who are on the fence, or even for people who want to but feel like there are some obstacles in the way, why do you think they should, based on your personal experience?
In my 20s, I was single for most of my 20s, and I did a lot of dating and staying up until midnight, drinking with friends, and like smoking with friends until 1, 2 a.m. and having whiskey way too late with my roommates, and I did all of that, and it was great. And sort of like in my 20s, I rode this ride, right? I'm in this amusement park, and the amusement park is my life. And in the 20s, there was this roller coaster called drinking martinis until 1 a.m. in the morning and then getting a little bit of high before going to sleep. And it's a great fucking roller coaster. I rode it over and over and over again, and I loved that roller coaster. But there's these other roller coasters in the amusement park of life. One of them is being a dad. And it's an incredibly unique experience, like to bring something into the world that would not have otherwise existed, and to raise him or her, and to watch them change, and to watch their personalities change behind their little face that looks a little bit like you, or no, maybe your partner, or if you've adopted, then someone else, but you love them just the same. It's a genuinely magical experience. It is its own roller coaster. And I feel like, life is this beautifully small and finite thing. You are locked in this amusement park for just a small period of time. And I feel like you might as well ride the rides. Like, this is something you were practically built to do. Like, what were we built to do biologically? Like, we were built to breathe. We were built to, hunt and eat and drink and, yes, procreate and have sex. We were also built, we evolved to parent. If we weren't evolved to parent, we would not exist. Babies, as you well know, are among the most pathetic creatures on God's beautiful earth. They can't do a fucking thing for themselves. So if parents aren't evolutionarily honed to parent, the species does not replace itself. But so you are built to do this. And I think a lot of moms and a lot of dads sort of beautifully, or discovered to their own surprise, that there was like this person inside of them that hadn't been activated, that is activated upon the moment of becoming a father. And that's a really, really lovely self-discovery. And you're not going to have that self-discovery if you choose not to have kids. I'm not going to say that that's going to make you miserable forever. I'm not saying that like you've wasted your life. I am saying there's this ride, and it's in the amusement park, and you're only in this park once, and then you die, and it's lights out forever. Give it a shot. Mm-hmm. Ride the rides. That's my feeling.
I do see my life now and before and after, and it's only been 4 months since my daughter was born, and I feel like I've kind of changed tremendously in some ways, but also feel like a lot of my life hasn't changed as much as I thought it would.
And it'll change again, because your child's going to keep changing, right? My oldest is only 3, so it's not like I'm speaking to you like an 80-year-old who's raised like 7 kids and they're all in their 40s.
Yeah.
But it's going to keep changing, right? I think when I first became a dad, I thought, there's this door that I'm going to walk through, and I don't know who I'll be on the other side of that door, but I'll be someone else, and I can't wait to meet that guy. But now, 3 years later, I see it's just one fucking door after another. Like, they turn 1, it's a new door. They turn 2, it's a new door. They learn to sleep by themselves, that's a door. They stop sleeping because they learn how to talk and become afraid of the dark and say mama, mama, dada, dada 7 times a night. Another door, a new challenge. It keeps changing. And there's a sort of like meta lesson of life there, right? That there's no arrival fallacy, There's no finishing the game. There's no final door that you walk through and then you become the final person you'll ever be. You're always in the process of becoming someone new and meeting that new person. And I think that, in a way, being a father has sort of made that aspect of life clear to me.
No Such Thing is a production of Kaleidoscope Content. Our executive producers are Kate Osborne and Mangesh Hatikadur. The show was created by Manny Fidel, Noah Friedman, and Devin Joseph. The theme and credit songs are by me, Manny, and the mixing was done by Steve Bone. Thank you so much to our guests this week, Anna Sussman, the author of Inconceivable, The Impossibility of Family in an Age of Uncertainty, coming out this September. Be sure to pre-order her book at the link in our show notes. And Derek Thompson, a writer and contributor to The Atlantic, who also has a great Substack at DerekThompson.org. Be sure to check us out at nosuchthing.show, and we will see you next week.
Such thing.